"Step back from my child." The single dad's roar stopped a kidnapper cold, but when the town saw his lightning-fast takedown, they realized this quiet mechanic was hiding a deadly Delta Force past. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Miller's Auto Repair as Ethan Cole rolled out from under a stubborn Chevy pickup. Grease stained his weathered hands, and sweat dampened his plain white t-shirt. The familiar sense of motor oil and metal filled the small garage he'd called home for the past 5 years. "Almost done here, Mr. Thompson," he called out to the elderly man waiting in a worn chair by the office door. "Just needed to tighten that loose belt like I thought." "Take your time, son," Mr. Thompson replied with a gentle wave. "Been making that squealing noise for weeks now. Another few minutes won't hurt." Ethan glanced at the clock, mounted on the wall. 2:45 p.m. His movements became more purposeful as he gathered his tools. Lily would be finishing school soon, and he'd never once been late to pick her up. Not in the 3 years since Sarah passed. After quickly washing up in the garage's small bathroom, Ethan traded his work shirt for a clean blue button-down he kept hanging in his office. The mirror showed a man of 35, though some might guess older from the quiet weight in his eyes. His dark hair was still damp from washing away the day's grime. "All set, Mr. Thompson," he said, walking the older man to his truck. "Changed your oil while I was down there, too. You were about due." "What do I owe you, Ethan?" "Just the basic service charge. The oil change is on the house." Ethan smiled, already reaching for his keys. "You've sent enough business my way over the years." The walk to Lily's elementary school took exactly 12 minutes at a steady pace. Maple Street was quiet this time of day, with just a few neighbors tending their gardens or chatting on front porches. Miss Adelaide waved from her rocking chair, her orange tabby cat lounging at her feet. The Patterson kids zoomed past on their bikes, leaving behind echoes of laughter. Ethan loved these peaceful moments in their small town of Cedar Grove. Here, far from his past life, he could almost believe he was just another ordinary father heading to pick up his little girl. The school playground came into view, its bright primary colors standing out against the brick building. Children streamed out the double doors while teachers supervised from the steps. Ethan scanned the crowd, a habit he couldn't break, until he spotted that familiar head of honey brown hair. "Daddy!" Lily's face lit up as she ran to him, her backpack bouncing with each step. She crashed into his legs with an enthusiastic hug that never failed to make his heart swell. "Hey, sweetheart." He scooped her up, even though she insisted she was getting too big for it. At 8 years old, she was the spitting image of her mother. Same warm brown eyes, same gentle spirit. "How was your day?" "We had the drawing contest today." Lily wiggled down and dug through her backpack as they started walking. "Look what I made." She proudly held up a crayon masterpiece. 2 figures stood hand in hand beneath a smiling sun, one tall with dark hair, one small with pigtails. "Me and Daddy" was carefully printed across the top in wobbly letters. "That's beautiful, Lilybug," Ethan said, studying every detail. "Did you win the contest?" "Jenny won with her horse picture." Lily shrugged, unbothered. "But Mrs. Martinez said mine was very creative, and look," she pointed to the corner of the paper. "I drew Mommy's butterfly too, watching over us." Ethan's throat tightened. The small purple butterfly had become their special symbol for Sarah, ever since that day in the garden when one had landed on Lily's nose right after the funeral. "She's always watching over us, isn't she?" "Uh-huh." Lily skipped ahead a few steps, then turned to walk backwards so she could keep talking. "Can we have spaghetti for dinner? I helped Tommy with his math today, and he said his mom makes the best spaghetti, but I told him yours is better." "Is that right?" Ethan chuckled. "Well, I suppose we better have spaghetti then, to defend the family honor." "With extra meatballs? Would I make it any other way?" They fell into their usual after-school rhythm, Lily chattering about her day while Ethan listened intently to every word. She told him about the chapter they'd read in class, the new jump rope routine she'd learned at recess, and how she'd helped the classroom hamster escape during science. He didn't get very far, she assured him, just under Jeremy's desk. "But Mrs. Martinez said I have good problem-solving skills." "That's one way to put it," Ethan said, trying to hide his amusement. "Though maybe next time solve problems that don't involve loose rodents." The streets were growing quieter as the afternoon faded toward evening. Most kids had already made it home, leaving just the occasional car passing by. A cool breeze rustled the trees, carrying the first hints of autumn. "Daddy?" Lily's voice took on that thoughtful tone that usually preceded her deepest questions. "Do you think Mommy would like my drawing?" Ethan reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. "She would love it, sweetheart. She always said you got her artistic talent." "Really?" Lily beamed. "Could you tell me another Mommy story, please?" "Well," Ethan began, but the words died in his throat as a white van suddenly screeched around the corner ahead of them. His instincts, honed by years of training he tried to forget, screamed danger. The van jerked to a halt beside them. Before Ethan could react, the side door slid open and a masked figure lunged toward Lily. Time seemed to slow. Every muscle in Ethan's body tensed, combat awareness flooding his system. His daughter's startled gasp cut through him like a knife. "Step back from my child!" His voice boomed with command, a tone he hadn't used since leaving Delta Force. Without conscious thought, he was already moving to protect his daughter, his entire world narrowing to this single moment of threat. The masked man lunged forward, his gloved hands reaching for Lily. Time seemed to slow down as Ethan's mind shifted into a familiar state he hadn't accessed in years. His body moved with fluid precision, muscle memory taking over. "Daddy!" Lily's terrified scream pierced the air. In one smooth motion, Ethan pulled Lily behind him while simultaneously stepping into the attacker's space. The masked man's momentum worked against him as Ethan's right hand shot out, deflecting the reaching arms with a sharp block. Without hesitation, Ethan's left hand grabbed the attacker's wrist, twisting it at an awkward angle. The masked man grunted in pain. He tried to pull back, but Ethan maintained his grip, using the man's own movement to throw him off balance. The attacker stumbled, his feet tangling beneath him. Mrs. Henderson, who had been watering her front garden, dropped her watering can with a clatter. "Oh my word!" she gasped, water pooling around her feet. The masked man attempted to throw a wild punch with his free hand. Ethan blocked it effortlessly, then swept the attacker's legs out from under him. The man hit the sidewalk with a heavy thud, the air rushing from his lungs. "Stay down," Ethan commanded, his voice carrying the weight of authority. He pinned the attacker face down, one knee pressed firmly between the man's shoulder blades while maintaining control of the twisted arm. Lily stood frozen a few feet away, her blue backpack clutched tightly to her chest. Tears streamed down her face, but she didn't make a sound. "Someone call the police!" Mr. Rodriguez from the corner store shouted, already pulling out his phone. A small crowd had gathered on the sidewalk. Tommy Baker, the high school football coach, stepped forward. "Need any help holding him, Ethan?" "I've got him," Ethan replied calmly, though his heart was racing. The familiar techniques felt like putting on an old glove, comfortable but bringing back memories he'd rather forget. The masked man struggled briefly, but Ethan applied slightly more pressure to the hold, causing him to go still. "Don't move," Ethan warned quietly. "You'll only hurt yourself." Lily inched closer, still clutching her backpack like a shield. "Daddy?" "It's okay, sweetheart. Stay right there. Everything's going to be fine." Ethan kept his voice steady and reassuring despite the adrenaline coursing through his system. More neighbors emerged from their homes, drawn by the commotion. Sarah Wilson, who ran the local bakery, hurried over to Lily and wrapped a protective arm around her shoulders. "Those moves," whispered Bob Jenkins to his wife. "Did you see how fast he moved? Where'd a mechanic learn to fight like that?" The sound of approaching sirens filled the air. Red and blue lights flashed as two police cruisers pulled up to the curb. Officer Mike Patterson, whom Ethan knew from his regular coffee stops at the diner, jumped out first. "Everyone stand back!" Officer Patterson called out, his hand on his holster as he approached. His partner, Officer Reynolds, moved to secure the perimeter. "He tried to grab my little girl," Ethan explained, maintaining his hold on the attacker. Officer Patterson pulled out his handcuffs. "We've got him now, Ethan! You can let go!" With practiced efficiency, Ethan shifted his weight and transferred control to the officer. Patterson quickly cuffed the masked man while Reynolds read him his rights. As soon as Ethan stood up, Lily broke away from Sarah and ran to him, throwing herself into his arms. He lifted her up, holding her close as she buried her face in his neck. Her small body trembled against his chest. "Shh, I've got you," he whispered, rubbing gentle circles on her back. "You're safe now." Officer Patterson pulled the mask off the attacker's face, revealing a man Ethan had never seen before. The stranger glared at him with cold eyes as Officer Reynolds led him to the patrol car. "That was some impressive work, Ethan," Patterson said, pulling out his notepad. "Where'd you learn moves like that?" Before Ethan could answer, Mrs. Henderson chimed in. "It was like watching one of those action movies. He moved so fast, I could hardly believe my eyes." The crowd murmured in agreement. Ethan could feel their curious stares, their whispered questions. He focused on Lily, who had stopped trembling but still clung to him tightly. "Just did what any father would do," Ethan replied quietly, but he could see the questions in Patterson's eyes. "Well, whatever training you've had, it sure came in handy today," Patterson said, jotting notes in his pad. "We'll need statements from both of you, but we can do that tomorrow if you'd like to get Lily home now." Ethan nodded gratefully. "Thanks, Mike. First thing tomorrow." As the police cars pulled away with the would-be kidnapper, the neighbors began to disperse, though their excited chatter lingered in the air. "Did you see how he took that man down? Never knew our local mechanic was some kind of fighter. Thank goodness he knew what to do." Ethan pressed a kiss to Lily's hair, trying to ignore the whispers. "Ready to go home, sweetheart?" Lily nodded against his shoulder but didn't let go. He carried her the remaining 2 blocks to their house, aware of the eyes following them from behind curtained windows. His carefully constructed quiet life had just become a lot more complicated, but none of that mattered right now. All that mattered was the precious weight in his arms and the fact that she was safe. The fluorescent lights of the police station hummed overhead as Ethan sat in a worn chair across from Detective Martinez's desk. The detective's pen scratched against his notepad while Ethan kept his eyes fixed on Lily, who sat a few feet away at another officer's desk. Officer Sarah Thompson had given her a steaming cup of hot chocolate, and Lily's small hands wrapped around it gratefully. "So, Mr. Cole," Detective Martinez said, drawing Ethan's attention back. "Walk me through exactly what happened." Ethan shifted in his chair, his work clothes still carrying traces of motor oil from the garage. "We were walking home from school, like we always do. The van came out of nowhere. When the man grabbed for my daughter, I just reacted." "Reacted?" Martinez raised an eyebrow. "That was some reaction. The responding officers said your takedown was textbook perfect." "I'm just a protective father," Ethan said quietly, his shoulders tense. "Any dad would do the same. Most dads wouldn't know how to disarm an attacker without breaking a sweat." Martinez leaned forward. "Where'd you learn moves like that?" Before Ethan could answer, Lily's voice piped up from across the room. "Daddy, Officer Sarah says I can keep the teddy bear?" She hugged a small brown bear wearing a tiny police uniform. Ethan's face softened as he looked at his daughter. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. What are you going to name it?" "Hero," Lily declared. "Because that's what you are." Officer Thompson smiled at Lily while typing on her computer. "She's been very brave through all this. You've got quite a remarkable daughter, Mr. Cole." "She's my whole world," Ethan replied, his voice thick with emotion. Detective Martinez cleared his throat. "Back to the incident, Mr. Cole. The suspect isn't talking, but we found some interesting items in the van. Military-grade zip ties, a detailed map of the area with your garage marked, and your daughter's school schedule." Ethan's jaw clenched. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying this wasn't random. They targeted your daughter specifically." Martinez studied Ethan's face. "Any idea why someone would do that?" "No," Ethan said firmly, though his hands gripped the arms of the chair tightly. "We're just regular people. I fix cars. I raise my daughter. We go to church on Sundays." "Daddy," Lily called out again. "Can we go home soon? I'm tired." Ethan checked his watch. It was well past Lily's bedtime. "Detective, unless you need anything else." Martinez sighed and closed his notepad. "We'll need you to sign your statement, but then you're free to go. We'll have extra patrols in your neighborhood tonight." As Ethan signed the papers, Officer Thompson approached with Lily. "I've arranged for an officer to escort you home," she said kindly. "Just to be safe." "Thank you," Ethan nodded, taking Lily's hand. "Ready to go home, Princess? Can Hero come with us?" Lily held up the teddy bear. "Of course he can," Officer Thompson smiled. "He'll help keep you safe." They followed a young officer out to his patrol car. During the short drive home, Lily dozed against Ethan's shoulder, clutching her new bear. The streets of their small town were quiet now, but Ethan's mind was anything but peaceful. He kept replaying the attack, knowing his response had revealed more than he'd intended. The patrol car pulled up to their modest two-story house. The porch light was still on, just as they'd left it hours ago. What had started as a normal Tuesday had turned into something else entirely. "I'll walk you to the door," the officer offered. But Ethan politely declined. "We're fine from here, thank you." Ethan carried his sleeping daughter up the front walk, her head heavy on his shoulder. The motion-activated security lights illuminated their path, one of many precautions he'd installed when they'd first moved here. Just as he reached for his keys, a voice called out from the darkness, "Mr. Cole, Jessica Chen from Channel 5 News." A woman stepped into the light, microphone in hand. Behind her, a cameraman emerged from the shadows. "We'd like to ask you about today's attempted kidnapping," she continued, "and your background with Delta Force." Ethan's entire body went rigid. Lily stirred against his shoulder, mumbling sleepily. "Daddy?" "No comment," he managed to say, his voice steady despite the ice in his veins. He fumbled with his keys, trying to shield Lily from the camera. "Our sources confirm you served with distinction in Delta Force for 8 years, the reporter pressed. "Is that where you learned the combat skills you used today?" The key finally slid home in the lock. Ethan's mind raced. How had they uncovered that information so quickly? He'd been so careful all these years, building a new life, keeping his past buried. "Please respect our privacy," he said firmly. "My daughter needs to sleep. The public has a right to know why a decorated Delta Force operative is hiding out as a small-town mechanic." Chen persisted. "Were you running from something? Is that why your daughter was targeted today?" Ethan turned to face the reporter, his expression hard. "Turn off the camera, now." Something in his voice made the cameraman lower his equipment immediately. "My daughter has been through enough today," Ethan said quietly. "If you have questions, you can contact me through the police department. But right now, I'm asking you as a father, please leave us alone." Without waiting for a response, he opened the door and stepped inside, closing it firmly behind him. In the darkness of their entryway, he held Lily close, feeling her steady breathing against his chest. His secret was out. The quiet life he'd built so carefully was crumbling, and he had no idea how to protect Lily from what might come next. The weight of his past pressed down on him as he stood there, his daughter innocent and trusting in his arms, while outside, his carefully constructed world began to unravel. Morning sunlight streamed through the kitchen windows of Ethan's modest two-story home, casting warm patches across the wooden table where he sat with his coffee. His calloused hands gripped the local newspaper, the Pine Creek Herald, a bit too tightly. There he was, right on the front page, a photo from his military days alongside a recent picture someone had snapped of him at his garage. The headline jumped out at him. "Local mechanic revealed as former Delta Force operative." His jaw clenched as he scanned the article, detailing his decorated military career and subsequent disappearance from service. They'd even dug up quotes from his old commanding officer. "Daddy, can I have more orange juice?" Lily's voice broke through his concentration. She sat across from him, her legs swinging beneath the table, cereal bowl nearly empty. "Sure, sweetheart." Ethan folded the paper quickly, but not before Lily caught a glimpse of his photo. "Hey, that's you," she pointed at the newspaper. "Why are you in the paper? Is it because you stopped that bad man yesterday?" Ethan poured her juice, buying time to find the right words. "Yes, partly because of that." Lily took a sip and tilted her head, her curious brown eyes, so much like her mother's, studying him. "What's Delta Force? I heard Mrs. Peterson talking about it when we walked past her house." The question he'd been dreading. Ethan set the juice container down and pulled his chair closer to Lily's. "Well, sweetheart, before I was a mechanic, before you were born, I was a soldier. Like the ones in my history books? Something like that." He smiled softly. "Delta Force was a special team I worked with. We helped people who were in trouble." Lily's eyes widened. "Like superheroes?" Ethan's chest tightened. "No, not like superheroes. Just regular people doing their best to help others. But that was a long time ago. Now I'm just your dad who fixes cars." "Is that why you knew how to stop that man yesterday?" Lily's voice grew quieter. Ethan reached across the table and took her small hand in his. "I did what any father would do to protect their little girl. That's all that matters." "Did you fight bad guys when you were a soldier?" The question hung in the air. Ethan struggled with how much to reveal, not wanting to burden her young mind with the complexities of his past. "Sometimes we had to stop people who were doing wrong things." But you know what was the most important part of my job? What? Learning how to keep people safe. Just like I keep you safe. Lily seemed to consider this, spooning the last bit of cereal into her mouth. I'm glad you know how to keep people safe, Daddy. The school bus honked outside, saving Ethan from further explanations. There's your ride, kiddo. Got your backpack? After walking Lily to the bus and watching it pull away, Ethan headed to his garage. The familiar scent of motor oil and metal should have been comforting, but today it felt different. His peaceful routine had been shattered, and now everyone knew his secret. Throughout the morning, customers came in with their cars but stayed longer than necessary, asking thinly veiled questions about his military service. Ethan deflected each one with practiced ease, keeping his responses vague and redirecting conversations back to their vehicles. Around noon, while he was beneath Mrs. Henderson's Buick checking a transmission leak, the shop's bell chimed. Be right with you, he called out, sliding from under the car. Take your time, Cole. Some things never change. You're still getting your hands dirty. Ethan froze. He knew that voice. Standing slowly, he turned to face Marcus Wheeler, a man he hadn't seen in 7 years. Marcus looked exactly as Ethan remembered him, tall, sharp-featured, with calculating eyes that missed nothing. Wheeler. Ethan wiped his hands on a shop rag, maintaining a casual demeanor despite his racing pulse. Long way from Fort Bragg. Nice setup you've got here. Marcus walked around the garage, running his finger along a toolbox. Quite a change from kicking down doors in Baghdad. What do you want? Ethan positioned himself between Marcus and the garage's office where he kept his phone. Marcus held up his hands. Easy, brother. I came to warn you. He pulled out his phone, showing Ethan a series of surveillance photos. Yesterday wasn't random. That kidnapper, he's connected to Santiago. The name hit Ethan like a physical blow. Santiago, the arms dealer whose operation they dismantled in Colombia. The mission that had cost 3 team members their lives. Santiago's dead, Ethan said flatly. His brother isn't. Marcus pocketed his phone. This wasn't random, Ethan. They're coming for you. Ethan's mind raced to Lily, safely at school. But for how long? Why now? It's been 7 years. Because until yesterday, you were just a small-town mechanic. Now, Marcus gestured to a newspaper on the counter, your face is everywhere. They finally found you. The weight of Marcus's words settled over the garage like a heavy blanket. The quiet life Ethan had built, the peace he'd found in this small town, his daughter's safety, it was all at risk. The past he'd tried so hard to leave behind had finally caught up with him. The kitchen filled with the comforting aroma of spaghetti and meatballs, Lily's favorite meal. Ethan stirred the sauce, watching his daughter set the table with careful precision. She placed each fork exactly where it belonged, just like he'd taught her. Need any help, sweetheart? He asked, though he already knew the answer. I got it, Daddy, Lily replied, her tongue poking out in concentration as she lined up the napkins. Miss Miller says I'm really good at being responsible. The mention of Grace Miller, Lily's teacher, brought a small smile to Ethan's face. She had called earlier to check on Lily, showing the kind of care that made their small town special, the same town that now whispered about his past. That you are, Pumpkin. Ethan tested a meatball, then nodded with satisfaction. All right, dinner's ready. They settled into their usual spots, Ethan at the head of the table, Lily to his right. The empty chair to his left seemed to grow more noticeable on nights like these, when the weight of protecting their little family pressed heavily on his shoulders. Can we say grace, Daddy? Lily asked. Already holding out her small hands, Ethan took her hands in his, noting how tiny and soft they felt compared to his work-worn palms. They bowed their heads, and he cleared his throat. Dear Lord, thank you for this food, and for keeping us safe. His voice wavered slightly. Thank you for our blessings, for this home, and for each other. Watch over us, and guide us. Amen. Amen, Lily echoed, then dove into her spaghetti with enthusiasm. Ethan watched her eat, his own appetite diminished by the day's events. Still, he forced himself to take regular bites, maintaining the appearance of normalcy for her sake. Daddy? Lily twirled pasta around her fork. Tommy at school said his dad saw you on TV. He said you're like a superhero. Ethan set down his fork carefully. What do you think about that? I already knew you were a superhero. She smiled, marinara sauce dotting her chin. You fix everybody's cars and make the best meatballs and give the biggest hugs. His throat tightened. Those are pretty good superpowers to have, aren't they? The very best. Lily nodded seriously. But Daddy, how come you never told me about being a soldier? Ethan dabbed at her chin with a napkin, buying time to find the right words. Sometimes, sweetheart, grown-ups have parts of their life they want to leave in the past, like when you put away your baby toys because you're a big girl now. Did you put away being a soldier because you wanted to be my daddy instead? Exactly like that. He smoothed her hair. Being your daddy is the most important job I've ever had. After dinner, they followed their usual bedtime routine. Ethan helped Lily brush her teeth, read her favorite story about a brave little train, and tucked her into bed surrounded by her stuffed animals. Daddy? Her voice was small in the dim room. Are the bad men coming back? Ethan's heart clenched. He sat on the edge of her bed, taking her small hand in his. No one is going to hurt you, Lily. I promise you're safe. But what about you? Are you safe? He leaned down and kissed her forehead. God watches over both of us, remember? And I'm not going anywhere. Now close those eyes, Pumpkin. Will you check under the bed? And the closet? Of course. Ethan made a show of checking every corner of her room, even though his trained eyes had already assessed it upon entering. All clear. Just Mr. Whiskers, the cat, taking a nap under there. Lily giggled as he tickled her side. I love you, Daddy. I love you too, baby girl. Sweet dreams. He left her nightlight on and pulled her door mostly closed, listening to her breathing even out as she drifted off to sleep. Only then did he allow his shoulders to sag, the weight of the day settling fully upon them. Downstairs, Ethan moved through the house with practiced silence, checking locks and windows. He drew the curtains tight, activated the security system he'd installed years ago, but rarely armed. Every shadow seemed to hold potential threats now that his past had caught up with him. In his study, he stood before the heavy oak cabinet built into the wall. His fingers traced the familiar combination lock, muscle memory taking over as he turned the dial. The cabinet door opened with a soft click. Inside, wrapped in oiled cloth, lay his service weapon. He hadn't touched it since moving to town, wanting nothing more than to be just another mechanic raising his daughter. But now, staring at the wrapped bundle, Ethan felt the pull of two worlds threatening to tear him apart. His hands shook slightly as he unwrapped the cloth, revealing the pistol beneath. It felt both foreign and familiar in his grip, like meeting an old friend he'd hoped never to see again. He checked the mechanism automatically, muscle memory from countless inspections during his service years. Ethan's reflection in the gun's polished surface showed a man caught between promises, the promise of peace he'd made when choosing this quiet life, and the promise to protect Lily at any cost. His jaw clenched as he rewrapped the weapon and secured it back in the cabinet, letting out a long, controlled breath. Standing there in the darkness of his study, Ethan Cole was no longer just a small-town mechanic or a former Delta Force operative. He was a father trying to bridge the gap between the man he'd been and the man his daughter needed him to be. The morning sun barely peeked over the horizon when Ethan pulled up to Cole's auto repair. His old pickup truck's tires crunched on the gravel as he parked in his usual spot. The familiar scent of motor oil and metal hung in the crisp autumn air. He climbed out, his work boots hitting the ground with a soft thud. The events of yesterday still weighed heavy on his mind. The warning from his old military contact, the newspaper article, the questioning looks from townspeople. But work needed to be done. Cars needed fixing. Bills needed paying. Ethan reached for his keys, but something white caught his eye. A piece of paper lay just inside the garage door, clearly slipped underneath overnight. His heart rate quickened as he picked it up. The paper was cheap printer stock, folded once. Inside, 7 words were typed in plain black letters. You can't hide. She's next. The paper crumpled in his fist. His trained eyes immediately scanned the surroundings, the empty street, the quiet buildings, the shadows between them. Nothing seemed out of place, but that meant little. Some threats didn't announce themselves. He pulled out his phone and dialed the elementary school's number, which he knew by heart. Mountain View Elementary, a cheerful voice answered. This is Ethan Cole, he said, keeping his voice steady. I need to speak with Principal Matthews about Lily. A few moments later, Principal Matthews came on the line. Mr. Cole, what can I do for you? I need to implement some changes to Lily's pickup arrangements, Ethan said. Starting today, no one but me is authorized to pick her up. Not even in an emergency. I'll provide a password that must be verified. Of course, Mr. Cole. After yesterday's incident, we've already heightened security. There was a pause. Is everything all right? Just being careful, Ethan replied. I appreciate your help. He ended the call and stood there for a moment, the threatening notes still crushed in his hand. The quiet morning suddenly felt different, not peaceful, but waiting, like the calm before a storm. Inside his office, Ethan pulled out an old shoebox from behind a filing cabinet. He hadn't opened it in years, not since moving to this small town. Inside were fragments of his past life, dog tags, a few photographs, and a small black notebook. He flipped through the pages, scanning names and dates from his Delta Force days. Memories flooded back, missions in remote locations, faces of comrades, some now gone. But one name made him stop: Marcus Reeves. They'd served together for 3 years until that final mission in Afghanistan. The one that went wrong. The one that led to Reeves being discharged and swearing revenge on those he blamed. Ethan's phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Henderson next door. She watched Lily after school when he worked late. Lily's having fun in the backyard. Don't worry about rushing home early today. He walked to the window. From here, he could see his house 2 blocks away. In the backyard, Lily's bright yellow dress was visible as she played on her swing set. Mrs. Henderson sat in her usual chair on the porch, keeping watch while knitting. The sight of his daughter, carefree and innocent, made his chest tighten. She was humming. He could almost hear it across the distance. Probably that song from her favorite movie that she'd been singing all week. Her dark curls bounced as she swung higher and higher, trying to touch the sky with her toes like she always did. Ethan looked down at the crumpled note, then back at his daughter. The pieces clicked into place. The attempted kidnapping, the timing, the threat. It all pointed to Reeves. The man had waited years, planning his revenge, and now he was targeting what mattered most to Ethan. His jaw clenched as he watched Lily playing, unaware of the danger circling their quiet life. The peaceful existence he'd built for them, the normal childhood he'd wanted for her, it was all at risk. But he hadn't spent 10 years in Delta Force, hadn't survived countless missions to let anyone harm his little girl. The shoebox went back into its hiding place, but Ethan kept the notebook. He would need those old contacts, those resources he'd left behind. As he stared at his daughter swinging in the distance, her yellow dress bright against the autumn trees, he made a silent vow. Whatever it took, whatever he had to do, she would stay safe. His enemies had made a fatal mistake in targeting Lily. They'd forgotten that a father's love was the deadliest weapon of all. The white wooden church stood peaceful against the clear Sunday morning sky. Ethan sat in his usual spot near the back, Lily beside him in her favorite blue dress. She swung her feet, humming softly as she colored in her children's Bible. The familiar creak of old wooden pews and the gentle whir of ceiling fans filled the air. But something was different today. Ethan could feel it in the way people's eyes darted toward him, then quickly away. The usual warm greetings had been shorter, more hesitant. Some pews that were normally full near him sat conspicuously empty. Mrs. Henderson, who'd always saved them cookies after service, now clutched her purse tighter when Ethan passed. Mr. Roberts, whose truck Ethan had fixed countless times, suddenly found the hymnal fascinating when their eyes met. "Did you finish your picture, sweetheart?" Ethan whispered to Lily, trying to focus on her instead of the murmurs around them. "Almost," Lily replied, her small tongue poking out in concentration as she carefully colored an angel's wings. "Do you think Mommy looks like this in heaven?" Ethan's throat tightened. "I'm sure she's even more beautiful, baby." Behind them, someone whispered too loudly. "But he was in Delta Force. That means he's killed people." "Shh. He'll hear you. Well, he did save his daughter. Yes, but what if he snaps? People like that." The organ music started, drowning out the whispers. Ethan's hands clenched in his lap as the congregation rose for the opening hymn. Lily stood too, abandoning her coloring to hold the hymnal with her father. Her small voice joined the others, pure and clear, singing about amazing grace. Pastor Daniel Harris stood at the pulpit, his kind eyes scanning the congregation. When they met Ethan's, there was no fear there, only understanding. The pastor had been the first person to welcome Ethan to town 5 years ago, never asking about his past, only offering friendship and spiritual guidance. "Today," Pastor Daniel began after the hymn, "we're going to talk about judgment. His gaze swept across the pews, not God's judgment, but our own human tendency to judge others without walking in their shoes. More whispers rustled through the congregation. Ethan could feel people stealing glances at him. "There's a story in John, chapter 8, the pastor continued, about a woman brought before Jesus by those who would stone her. They were so certain of their righteousness, so sure of their judgment." He paused. "But Jesus said, 'Let any one of you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone.'" The whispers grew quieter. Pastor Daniel's voice grew stronger. "This week, our community witnessed something extraordinary. A father protected his child. Some call him a hero." The pastor's eyes met Ethan's again. Others focus on his past, on what they think they know about who he is. Lily looked up at her father, reaching for his hand. Ethan squeezed it gently. "But I ask you this, how many of us can say we truly know another person's heart? How many of us can claim to understand the choices someone made to protect others, to serve their country, to be a father?" The church fell silent, except for the gentle whir of the fans. "A man should not be judged solely by his abilities," Pastor Daniel said softly, "but by how he chooses to use them, by the love in his heart, by his dedication to his child, by his desire to live in peace among his neighbors." Mrs. Henderson shifted in her seat, looking down at her hands. Mr. Roberts cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Perhaps instead of whispering about what we fear," the pastor continued, "we should ask ourselves, what would Jesus do? Would he turn away a neighbor? Would he condemn a father for protecting his child? Or would he offer understanding, community, and love?" Lily leaned against Ethan's arm, and he wrapped it around her shoulders. His throat felt tight again, but for a different reason now. After the service, while Lily chatted with her Sunday school friends, Pastor Daniel approached Ethan in the empty sanctuary. Sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows, casting colorful shadows on the worn wooden floor. "Walk with me, son," the pastor said quietly. They moved down the center aisle, their footsteps echoing in the empty church. Pastor Daniel's gray hair caught the colored light from the windows, and his weathered face held the same gentle wisdom it always did. "The whispers will die down," he said. "People fear what they don't understand." Ethan nodded, his jaw tight. "I never wanted them to know. I came here to leave that life behind." "I know." Pastor Daniel stopped, turning to face him. "But sometimes God has other plans. Sometimes our past isn't meant to stay buried, but to be transformed into something that serves his purpose." "What purpose could there be in this?" Ethan asked, his voice rough. "My daughter is in danger. The town is afraid of me. Everything I built here is still here," Pastor Daniel interrupted gently. "Your strength protected Lily. Your skills saved her. But now comes the harder part." "What's that?" The pastor's eyes were kind but knowing. "Your battle isn't just with enemies, son. It's with yourself." The evening sun painted long shadows across the front porch of the Cole house. Ethan sat in his old wooden rocking chair, the familiar creak matching his gentle back-and-forth motion. Beside him, Lily curled up in her smaller rocker, her stuffed bear clutched tight against her chest. The air was warm and sweet with the scent of blooming jasmine from their garden. "Daddy." Lily's voice was soft, thoughtful. "Yes, sweetheart?" Ethan turned to look at his daughter. Her brown hair caught the golden light, reminding him so much of Sarah, his late wife. "I had a dream last night." Lily's fingers played with her bear's ear, a habit she'd had since she was tiny. "Mommy was in it." Ethan's rocking slowed. His throat tightened, but he kept his voice steady. "Yeah? What was she doing in your dream?" "She was wearing that pretty yellow dress from the picture on my dresser." Lily smiled, her eyes distant with the memory. "You know, the one where she's holding the flowers? I remember that dress." Ethan nodded, his own mind filling with images of Sarah on their wedding day. "She loved that dress." "She was so pretty, Daddy." Lily hugged her bear closer. "And she was smiling, just like in the picture. But in my dream, she was talking to me." A warm breeze rustled through the porch wind chimes, their gentle tinkling mixing with the distant sound of crickets beginning their evening chorus. Ethan watched his daughter's face, seeing the same quiet strength that Sarah had always shown. "What did she say to you, baby?" Lily looked up at him with those big brown eyes that could melt his heart in an instant. "She said, 'Daddy will keep you safe.'" The words hit Ethan like a physical force. His eyes welled up, and he quickly blinked but couldn't stop a tear from rolling down his cheek. Yet despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm him, he found himself smiling. "Daddy, are you crying?" Lily stood up from her rocker and moved to him, climbing onto his lap. "Just a little bit, sweetheart." He wrapped his arms around her, holding her close. "Sometimes people cry when they're happy too." "But why are you happy about being sad?" Her small hand reached up to wipe his cheek. Ethan chuckled softly. "Because your mommy's right. And hearing that she told you that in your dream, well, it means a lot to me." They sat together in comfortable silence for a while, watching as the sky turned from gold to pink to purple. The streetlights flickered on one by one, and the first stars began to appear. "Tell me about Mommy," Lily asked, her voice growing sleepy. "What would she say about everything that happened?" Ethan took a deep breath, choosing his words carefully. "Your mommy was the kindest, strongest person I ever knew. She always said that being brave wasn't about not being scared. It was about doing the right thing even when you are scared. Like you did when that bad man came? Yeah, like that." Ethan stroked her hair. "But you know what? Your mommy was braver than me every single day. She faced everything with love in her heart, even when things were hard." Lily yawned, snuggling closer. "I wish I could remember her more." "I see her in you every day," Ethan said softly. "In your smile, in your laugh, in the way you draw pictures for everyone to make them happy. That's pure Sarah right there." The porch light attracted a few moths, their wings casting dancing shadows on the wooden boards. Ethan noticed Lily's eyes getting heavy. "I think it's somebody's bedtime," he said, standing up carefully with her in his arms. "Can you tell me one more thing about Mommy?" Lily mumbled against his shoulder as he carried her inside. Of course, what was her favorite thing to do? Ethan smiled as he climbed the stairs. "Reading to you. Every night, no matter how tired she was, she'd read you a story." Sometimes she'd make up her own stories about a brave little girl who could do anything she set her mind to. They reached Lily's bedroom, decorated with her artwork and twinkling fairy lights. Ethan helped her change into her pajamas and tucked her into bed, making sure her bear was properly settled beside her. "Daddy?" Lily's voice was barely a whisper now. "Yes, baby? I'm glad Mommy told me you'd keep me safe. I already knew it, but it's nice that she knows too." Ethan leaned down and kissed her forehead, his heart so full it felt like it might burst. "Your mommy's right," he whispered, pulling the covers up to her chin. "I'll never let you go." He watched as her eyes fluttered closed, her breathing becoming deep and even. In the soft glow of her nightlight, Ethan could see Sarah in every feature of their daughter's peaceful face. He sat on the edge of the bed for a moment longer, grateful for this precious gift his wife had left him, this little girl who carried both their hearts within her. Finally, he stood and moved quietly to the door. Before closing it, he took one last look at his sleeping daughter and whispered, "Thank you, Sarah. I promise I won't let either of you down." The morning sun filtered through the kitchen blinds, casting striped shadows across Ethan's coffee mug. He'd been up since dawn, his military habits still running deep despite years of civilian life. Lily's cereal bowl sat in the sink, her rushed breakfast before the school bus came. The house felt too quiet now. His phone buzzed on the counter, an unknown number flashing on the screen. Ethan stared at it, his coffee cooling forgotten. Few people had his number, and fewer still would call this early. His fingers tightened around the mug as he answered. "Cole here. Ghost 6. Been a while." The gruff voice on the other end used his old call sign, making Ethan's spine stiffen. "Remember Staff Sergeant Martinez?" Ethan set his mug down carefully. "Diego. Didn't expect to hear from you." "Yeah, well, didn't expect to make this call either." Diego's voice was tight with tension. "Listen, brother. Something's come across my desk. You need to know about it." Ethan moved to the window, scanning the quiet street outside. An old pickup truck rumbled past, Mr. Jenkins from the hardware store giving a friendly wave. Ethan raised his hand automatically, even as his mind sharpened into combat focus. "I'm listening. Your visitor the other day? The one who tried to take your girl?" Diego paused, papers rustling in the background. "We traced the money. It leads back to someone you know. Someone we both know." The morning suddenly felt colder. Ethan's free hand clenched into a fist. "Who?" "Victor Hale." The name hit Ethan like a physical blow. Memories flashed through his mind. Desert operations, shared missions, brotherhood forged in combat. Then the betrayal, the night everything went wrong. The night that sent Victor down a dark path of mercenary work and revenge. "You're sure?" Ethan's voice was barely above a whisper. 100%. Diego's tone was grim. "He's been busy since you left the service. Built himself a nice little network of hired guns. Been taking contracts from some real nasty players." Ethan pressed his forehead against the cool glass of the window. "Why now? It's been years. Word is he's been tracking you for months. That mechanic shop of yours? Not as low profile as you thought. He's been watching, waiting for the right moment." A car slowed down near his driveway, and Ethan's muscles coiled instinctively. Just the mailman. He forced himself to breathe. "The kidnapping attempt," Ethan said. "That was what? A test? More like a message. He wanted you to know he could get close. Wanted you to feel vulnerable." Diego's voice hardened. "But here's the thing that's got me worried, brother. This isn't just about you anymore. Lily." The name came out like a prayer. "Victor's changed, Ethan. The man we served with? He's gone. This version? He's cold. Calculated. He's been studying your routine, your daughter's schedule. Knows when she gets on that school bus, which days she has art class." Ethan's blood ran cold. He thought of Lily just an hour ago, climbing those bus steps with her butterfly backpack, waving goodbye with a bright smile. "How did you get this intel?" Ethan asked, already moving through the house, checking locks, mentally cataloging his security measures. "Still got friends in intelligence. One of them flagged some chatter. Victor's been bragging in certain circles about having you in his sights. Says he's going to take everything from you, nice and slow. Make you watch." The phone creaked in Ethan's grip. "He won't touch her. There's more." Diego hesitated. "Got a trace on his current location. He's not overseas anymore, Ethan. He's in the country. Actually, he's a lot closer than that." A text message pinged through. Ethan pulled the phone from his ear, opened the message. It was a satellite image, timestamp from 2 days ago. A black SUV parked on a side street. His side street. 3 blocks from his house. "The vehicle's registered to one of his shell companies," Diego continued. "He's right there, Ethan. In your town. Probably watching you right now." Ethan's training kicked in, his eyes systematically sweeping the visible streets through his windows, checking roof lines, parked cars, shadowed porches. The peaceful neighborhood suddenly felt like a combat zone. "I can make some calls," Diego offered. "Get some people your way." "No." Ethan's voice was steel. "I won't risk anyone else getting caught in this. This is between me and him. At least let me. Thank you for the warning, Diego. I mean that. But from here on out, I handle this my way." There was a long pause on the line. "You're not alone in this, brother." "I know." Ethan's gaze fell on a photo of Lily on the wall, her gap-toothed smile beaming at the camera. "But I won't let anyone else get hurt because of my past. Not again. Watch your 6 go 6. Always do." Ethan lowered the phone, staring at the satellite image one more time. Victor Hale. The name brought back memories of shared missions, late-night talks about honor and duty, a brotherhood that seemed unbreakable. Until that night in Kandahar, when Victor chose money over loyalty, when his actions got 3 good men killed. The phone suddenly buzzed again. A new text message. Unknown number. "Nice house, brother. Lily's room has a great view of the sunrise. Those butterfly curtains really brighten up the place." Ethan's hand trembled with rage as he smashed the phone down on the counter. The screen cracked, but he barely noticed. Victor knew where they lived, had probably been watching them for weeks, had seen inside his daughter's bedroom. The quiet morning shattered like the phone's screen, leaving only the cold certainty of what was coming. The school board meeting room buzzed with anxious voices. Parents filled every chair, their faces tight with worry. At the front of the room, 5 board members sat behind a long wooden table, their expressions grim. Principal Matthews adjusted his tie, clearing his throat to bring order to the crowded space. "Let's begin," he announced, tapping his gavel. "We're here to discuss concerns about student safety following recent events." Ethan sat in the back row, his work clothes still spotted with grease from the garage. He'd rushed over as soon as he got the call. His hands were clasped together so tightly his knuckles had turned white. Sarah Mitchell, mother of 3, stood up first. "My kids are terrified," she declared, her voice shaking. "This man brings danger to our school. His daughter shouldn't be here, putting all our children at risk." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. Ethan's jaw clenched, but he remained silent. "My Tommy sits next to Lily in class," another parent added. "What if these criminals target the whole classroom? We can't take that chance." More parents stood up, their voices overlapping. "She needs to go to another school. Think about our children's safety. We can't have terrorists targeting our kids." Principal Matthews banged his gavel again. "Please, one at a time." Miss Rebecca Anderson, Lily's third-grade teacher, rose from her seat. Her normally gentle face was set with determination. She smoothed her flowered dress and faced the crowd. "I've been teaching at this school for 15 years, she began, her voice quiet but firm. "And I've never seen a more loving father than Ethan Cole, or a sweeter child than Lily." The room fell silent. "You're all talking about safety," Miss Anderson continued. "But have you thought about what message we're sending our children if we punish an innocent 8-year-old girl? What are we teaching them about compassion? About community?" She turned to face the board members directly. "Lily Cole is one of my best students. She helps other children with their reading. She shares her lunch with anyone who forgets theirs. Last week, she was the only one who befriended a new student when everyone else ignored him." Ethan's throat tightened as he listened. He hadn't known these things about his daughter's school life. "And Mr. Cole," Miss Anderson went on, "volunteers at every school event, fixes our ancient heating system for free, and still finds time to read to our kindergarten class once a week. Are these the actions of someone who brings danger to our community?" Sarah Mitchell stood up again. "But he lied about who he was. He's been hiding his past." "He protected his daughter," Miss Anderson interrupted firmly. "And when danger came to our school, he stopped it. Would you rather he hadn't?" The room grew quiet again. Principal Matthews leaned forward. "Miss Anderson makes some valid points. Mr. Cole, would you like to address the board?" Ethan stood slowly, aware of all eyes on him. "I understand your fears," he said quietly. "I'm a parent too. Everything I've done, everything I do, is to keep my daughter safe. But Lily," his voice caught for a moment, "Lily loves this school. These are her friends, her teachers. This is her home." He looked around the room, meeting the eyes of concerned parents. "I give you my word. I will do everything in my power to keep all your children safe, not just my own." That's what being part of a community means. The board members exchanged glances. Mrs. Henderson, the eldest board member, spoke up. "Perhaps we're looking at this the wrong way. Instead of pushing away a family in need, we should be asking how we can help protect them, and by extension, all our children." Principal Matthews nodded thoughtfully. "We could increase security measures, install better cameras, hire an additional resource officer." "I'll help with the installation," Ethan offered immediately. "Free of charge." More parents began nodding. The tension in the room slowly eased. After further discussion, the board voted unanimously. Lily would stay. As people filed out of the meeting room, Ethan approached Miss Anderson. She was gathering her things, her hands trembling slightly from the emotional meeting. "Miss Anderson," he said softly, "I don't know how to thank you." She looked up at him with kind eyes. "There's nothing to thank me for, Mr. Cole. I just told the truth." She paused, then added, "You know, Lily talks about you all the time. 'My daddy can fix anything,' she says. She's so proud of you." Ethan swallowed hard. "I'm trying my best. That's all any of us can do," Miss Anderson replied. She touched his arm gently. "You're not alone in this." The fluorescent lights in Ethan's garage cast long shadows across the oil-stained concrete floor. He'd pulled his truck deep into the back bay, creating an impromptu training space, away from prying eyes. The familiar scent of motor oil and metal hung in the air as he stood in the center, his breath steady and controlled. His weathered hands, still bearing traces of engine grease despite thorough washing, curled into loose fists. Ethan closed his eyes, letting his awareness expand to fill the space around him. The skills were there, buried under years of peaceful living, like old tools gathering dust in a forgotten drawer. He started with the basics, footwork first. The rubber soles of his work boots whispered against concrete as he moved through the patterns drilled into him long ago. Forward, diagonal, pivot. His muscles protested slightly, remembering different movements now. reaching for wrenches, bending under car hoods, lifting Lily onto his shoulders. Still too slow, he muttered to himself, repeating the sequence. Each step became more fluid as muscle memory awakened. The shadows danced with him as he picked up speed, adding hand movements to the footwork. Block, strike, redirect. The motions felt foreign yet familiar, like speaking a language he'd once been fluent in but hadn't used in years. A wrench clattered off its pegboard, the sound sharp in the quiet garage. Ethan spun instantly toward the noise, dropping into a defensive stance. His heart hammered until he realized it was just the vibration from a passing truck. He straightened, running a hand through his graying hair. The old instincts were there, maybe too much there. "Lord," he whispered, "help me find the balance." He moved to the workbench where he'd laid out several common tools. His hands hovered over them, remembering different lessons. A wrench could become a hammer strike. A long screwdriver could extend his reach. Everything could be a weapon. That had been one of the first lessons in his training. But they were also just tools, he reminded himself. Tools that fixed things, built things, helped people, just like his skills. The question was how to use them right. Ethan picked up a rubber practice knife he'd ordered online. The weight felt wrong, too light, too safe. But it would serve its purpose. He began working through disarm sequences, his movements becoming smoother with each repetition. Muscle memory was returning faster than he'd expected, and he wasn't sure if that was comforting or concerning. The clock on the wall ticked past midnight. Sweat darkened his t-shirt despite the cool autumn air drifting through the garage's side door. His body was already telling him he'd pay for this tomorrow. Muscles used to fixing cars weren't the same as those needed for combat. He paused to catch his breath, leaning against his toolbox. His eyes fell on the family photo tucked into its corner. Him and Lily at the county fair last summer, her face bright with cotton candy and laughter. Next to it was an older photo, worn at the edges, of Sarah holding newborn Lily in the hospital. "I promised you both peace," he said softly to the photos. "Never thought I'd need both sides of myself to keep that promise." Ethan straightened and moved to the center of the garage again. This time he worked on ground techniques, how to fall safely, how to get up quickly, how to fight from disadvantaged positions. The concrete was unforgiving, but he needed to know if he could still handle the impact. After several falls, he lay there for a moment, staring up at the fluorescent lights. His body ached, but it was a productive kind of pain. The kind that meant he was getting back something he'd need. Just insurance, he told himself, standing up one more time. Pray for peace, but be ready for war. He worked through one final series of drills, this time combining everything: movement, strikes, falls, and recoveries. His breathing remained controlled, his movements economical. No wasted energy, no flashy techniques. Just the pure, practical skills he'd learned in another life. Finally, Ethan stopped. He stood still in the center of the garage, letting his breathing slow, feeling the night air cool his skin. His hands weren't shaking anymore. The skills were rusty, yes, but they were there. Like riding a bicycle, some things you never really forget. He cleaned up carefully, returning tools to their proper places, wiping down surfaces that might show signs of his practice. The garage needed to look normal in the morning, just another mechanic's shop in a small town. The drive home was quiet, streets empty at this late hour. Ethan's muscles were already starting to stiffen, but his mind felt clearer than it had in days. He had a plan now, or at least the beginning of one. At home, he checked all the locks twice before heading upstairs. The third step still creaked. He'd been meaning to fix that for months. Now he decided to leave it. An early warning system had its uses. Lily's door was slightly ajar, just as he'd left it. He peered in, letting his eyes adjust to the dim glow of her nightlight. She was curled up under her favorite quilt, one arm wrapped around the stuffed elephant she'd had since she was 2. Her face was peaceful in sleep, untroubled by the shadows gathering around their lives. Ethan moved silently into the room, careful not to wake her. He knelt beside her bed, studying her face, Sarah's nose, his stubborn chin, and a spirit that was entirely her own. His body ached from training, but his heart ached more at the thought of anything happening to her. "This ends before it touches you again," he whispered, his voice barely a breath in the quiet room. He gently tucked the quilt more securely around her shoulders, then stood, his knees protesting the movement. The morning sun cast long shadows across Maple Street as Ethan guided his old pickup truck through the familiar neighborhood. Something felt off. His trained eyes noticed the unfamiliar silver sedan parked 3 houses down from his. It hadn't moved in 2 days. Further ahead, a dark SUV with tinted windows sat quietly at the corner. He pulled into his driveway, his jaw tightening. The garage door groaned as it opened, the sound echoing in the still morning air. Inside, he found comfort in the familiar smell of motor oil and metal. But even here, in his sanctuary, unease crept along his spine. The clock on the wall showed 2:45 p.m., time to pick up Lily from school. He wiped his hands on a clean rag, his movements deliberate and careful. As he walked to his truck, he noted the position of every vehicle on the street, marking them in his mental map. The elementary school's playground came into view, filled with laughing children in bright winter coats. Ethan parked in his usual spot, scanning the area out of habit. Nothing seemed out of place, but years of training had taught him that seemed wasn't good enough when it came to safety. Lily bounded down the steps, her purple backpack bouncing with each step. Her smile, so much like her mother's, usually melted away his worries. But today, something was different about her expression. "Daddy!" She wrapped her arms around his waist, holding on a little tighter than usual. "Hey, sweetheart." He knelt down to her level, noting the slight tremor in her small hands. "Everything okay?" Lily's blue eyes darted to the side before meeting his. "There was a man today. He was watching me during recess." Ice filled Ethan's veins. "What man, honey? Can you tell me what he looked like?" He stood by the fence. Lily's voice grew quiet. "He had a scar here." She traced a line across her left cheek. "He smiled at me, but it wasn't a nice smile." Ethan's heart hammered against his ribs. Victor. The scar was unmistakable. A souvenir from their last mission together, before everything went wrong. "Did he talk to you?" Ethan kept his voice steady, not wanting to frighten her more. "No. Mrs. Thompson called us inside early." She looked worried. Lily clutched her father's hand. "Daddy, why was he watching me?" Ethan guided her to the truck, his eyes constantly moving, searching for threats. "Some people aren't very nice, sweetheart, but you did exactly right telling me about him." On the drive home, Ethan took a longer route, making sure no one was following them. Lily chatted about her art project, but he could hear the tension in her voice. She was trying to be brave, just like her mom would have been. At home, he watched Lily settle at the kitchen table with her homework. Her colored pencils scattered across the surface as she worked on a drawing, humming softly to herself. The sight squeezed his heart. This peaceful moment was everything he'd fought to protect. Ethan moved to the window, carefully staying back from the glass. The silver sedan was gone, replaced by a blue compact car he'd never seen before. They were watching, rotating vehicles to avoid detection. Amateur move. He taught better tactics than that in basic training. His phone buzzed. "Unknown number. She's getting better at drawing." Victor's voice slithered through the speaker. "That picture of a butterfly she made today, very creative." Ethan's fingers tightened around the phone. "You stay away from her." "Come on, old friend. Is that any way to greet your former brother-in-arms?" Victor's laugh held no warmth. "We need to talk about old times." "There's nothing to talk about." Ethan watched Lily add yellow wings to her butterfly. "It's over." It's not over until I say it's over." Victor's voice hardened. "You took everything from me that day. Now I'm going to take everything from you. You made your choices, Victor. I just followed orders." "Orders?" Victor spat the word. "You chose the mission over your team, left me to rot in that hellhole for 3 years, and now you're playing happy families while you were selling intel to terrorists." Ethan cut him off, keeping his voice low. "You betrayed everything we stood for." Silence stretched between them, heavy with years of bitterness and revenge. "Sweet little Lily," Victor finally said. "She looks just like her mother, doesn't she? Be a shame if something happened to her, too." The line went dead. Ethan stood motionless, Victor's threat echoing in his mind. Through the window, he saw another car he didn't recognize roll past the house. His options were running out. Each day brought Victor's net closer, threatening the peaceful life he'd built for Lily. "Daddy, look!" Lily held up her drawing. "I made it for you." He forced a smile, walking over to admire her work. The butterfly was beautiful, full of hope and innocence. Everything he'd tried to preserve in her life. Everything Victor threatened to destroy. In that moment, clarity struck him like a thunderbolt. He couldn't keep playing defense. Couldn't keep waiting for Victor's next move. The threat wouldn't end until he ended it. Years ago, he'd chosen duty over loyalty to stop Victor's betrayal. Now, he had to choose action over peace to protect his daughter. Ethan hugged Lily close, breathing in the sweet scent of her strawberry shampoo. "That's beautiful, sweetheart. Why don't you make one for Mrs. Thompson, too?" As she happily started another drawing, Ethan knew what he had to do. He couldn't let Victor keep stalking them. Couldn't risk Lily's safety on the hope that hiding would be enough. The time had come to confront his past head-on. He walked to his bedroom, opened the closet, and pulled out a small lockbox hidden behind his work boots. Inside lay a phone number he'd hoped never to use, his old handler's emergency contact. One call would give him what he needed, Victor's location. Staring at the number, Ethan made his decision. He would end this, not as a Delta Force operator, but as a father protecting his child. Victor wanted to drag him back into the shadows of their past. Fine. But this time, Ethan would make sure those shadows never touched Lily's future. The autumn wind rustled through the trees as Ethan pulled up to Miss Thompson's modest white cottage. His weathered hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white with tension. Lily sat beside him, her pink backpack clutched to her chest like a shield. "Remember what I told you, sweetheart?" Ethan asked, his voice gentle despite the storm brewing inside him. "Stay with Miss Thompson until you come back," Lily recited. She looked up at him with those big brown eyes that reminded him so much of her mother. "But why can't I go home with you, Daddy?" Ethan's heart clenched. He turned in his seat to face her fully. "Sometimes daddies have to take care of important things to keep their little girls safe. Miss Thompson will make those chocolate chip cookies you love." The mention of cookies brought a small smile to Lily's face, but worry still clouded her eyes. "You promise you'll come back?" "I promise, baby girl." He pulled her into a tight hug, breathing in the sweet scent of her strawberry shampoo. "I love you more than anything in this whole wide world." "I love you too, Daddy." Miss Thompson was already waiting at her front door, her kind face warm and welcoming. She'd been more than understanding when Ethan had called her earlier, explaining as much as he dared about the situation. "We'll have a wonderful time," Miss Thompson assured him, placing a protective hand on Lily's shoulder. "Don't worry about a thing here." Ethan nodded gratefully. "I've got my cell phone if there's any problem." The lie tasted bitter in his mouth. He knew where he was going. There wouldn't be any cell service. He watched Lily disappear into the cottage, forcing himself to smile and wave when she looked back one last time. Only when the door closed did he allow his expression to harden. The drive to the abandoned warehouse took 20 minutes, each passing mile stripping away more of the small-town mechanic facade. By the time he parked his truck in the overgrown lot, hidden from the main road, Ethan Cole, the father, had retreated, leaving space for the soldier he'd once been. He checked his gear methodically, not the full kit he'd once carried in the field, but enough. A concealed pistol at his hip, a knife in his boot, and most importantly, the small recording device tucked into his jacket pocket. If things went sideways, at least there'd be evidence of what happened here. The warehouse loomed before him, a hulking shadow against the afternoon sky. Broken windows gaped like missing teeth, and rust had eaten away at the metal siding. The perfect place for a meeting like this. Isolated, abandoned, forgotten by the world. Ethan moved with measured steps, his boots crunching softly on gravel. Every approach angle was exposed, every shadow potentially hiding a threat. Victor would have backup. He always did. The question was how many, and where. He spotted the first one easily enough. A glint of metal from the second-floor window. Sniper. The second was trying too hard to look casual, leaning against a defunct forklift near the side entrance. At least 2 more would be inside, plus Victor himself. 5 years ago, this kind of odds assessment would have been second nature. Now, it felt like trying to speak a language he'd half forgotten, the words coming back slowly but surely. The main entrance stood open, its heavy metal door groaning slightly in the wind. Ethan paused, letting his eyes adjust to the gloom within. Dust motes danced in the few shafts of light that penetrated the darkness. The air smelled of rust, mold, and something else. Gun oil. "I'm here, Victor." Ethan called out, his voice echoing off concrete walls. Just like you wanted. A chuckle emerged from the shadows, followed by slow, deliberate footsteps. Victor Hale emerged into a patch of light, looking exactly as Ethan remembered him, tall, lean, with that same arrogant smile that had always set his teeth on edge. "Cole," Victor said, spreading his arms wide in mock welcome. "I knew you couldn't stay buried forever." The familiar face brought a flood of memories, missions together, shared dangers, the brotherhood of combat. But that had been before Victor's betrayal, before he'd sold out his own team for profit, before he'd gotten good men killed. Ethan stood his ground, keeping his hands visible but ready. He could feel the weight of the sniper's scope on him, knew that one wrong move would end this conversation permanently. But he also knew Victor. The man's ego wouldn't let him end things that quickly. He'd want to talk first, to gloat. That was exactly what Ethan was counting on. "You could have stayed away," Victor continued, pacing in a loose circle. "Kept playing mechanic in your little town. Why'd you have to go and be a hero, Cole? Drawing attention to yourself like that? You sent that kidnapper," Ethan stated flatly. It wasn't a question. Victor's smile widened. "Had to smoke you out somehow. Though I must admit, watching you take down my man with those old moves, very impressive. Still got some fight left in you after all." "Leave my daughter out of this," Ethan growled. "Whatever you want, it's between us." "Oh, but that's where you're wrong." Victor stopped pacing, his eyes hardening. "See, you took something from me when you exposed our little side operation. Cost me years of work, millions in potential earnings. And now?" He spread his arms, indicating the warehouse. "Now I'm going to take something from you." Ethan's hands clenched into fists, every muscle in his body screaming to attack. But he held himself in check, remembering Lily's face, remembering his promise. "You touch her again, and I'll—" "You'll what?" Victor interrupted, his voice mocking. "Kill me? Come on, Cole. We both know you're not that man anymore. You're soft, domestic, playing house while the rest of us are still in the real world." The words were meant to sting, to provoke. 5 years ago, they might have worked. But Ethan wasn't that man anymore. Victor was right about that much. He was something else now, something stronger. He was a father. "You're right," Ethan said quietly. "I'm not that man anymore, and thank God for that." The warehouse air hung thick with dust and memories. Dim light filtered through grimy windows, casting long shadows across the concrete floor. Victor stood near a stack of old crates, his military posture unchanged after all these years. His face bore new scars, but his cold smile remained the same. "Been a while, Cole," Victor said, arms crossed casually over his chest. "Nice little life you've built. Quaint garage, sweet daughter. Must be peaceful, pretending to be normal." Ethan kept his distance, eyes scanning the warehouse's dark corners. His voice came out steady, controlled. "Leave my family out of this, Victor. Whatever happened between us stays between us." Victor's laugh echoed off the metal walls. "Family? You mean that little girl? The one who draws butterflies in art class and likes strawberry ice cream?" He paused, enjoying how Ethan's jaw tightened. "Oh yes, I've been watching. For weeks now." "You're sick," Ethan growled. "This isn't what we were trained for. We were soldiers, not monsters." "Soldiers?" Victor spat the word like poison. "You want to talk about being soldiers? Where was your loyalty when things got rough in Kandahar?" He took a step forward, his face twisting. "When the mission went sideways, you chose the civilians over your own team." Ethan stood his ground. "I chose what was right. Those people were innocent. Those people were collateral damage." Victor's voice rose sharply. "Your moral choice got 3 of our men killed. Johnson, Martinez, Peters. Their blood is on your hands." The names hit Ethan like physical blows, but he didn't flinch. "I live with those losses every day. But sacrificing innocent lives wasn't the answer." "No," Victor sneered. "You just sacrificed your brothers instead. Then you ran away, hid behind a toolbox and a little girl." He pulled out his phone, showing a photo of Lily at her school playground. "Sweet kid. Takes after her mother, doesn't she?" Ethan's hands curled into fists. "Don't you dare mention my wife." "Why not? Sarah was always too good for you anyway." Victor's eyes glinted with malice. "You know what's funny? While you're here playing tough guy, I could have someone grab your precious Lily right now. One phone call. Touch her. Ethan's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. And nothing on earth will protect you. Victor's smile widened. There he is. The real Ethan Cole. Not the peaceful mechanic, the killer I remember. He began circling slowly. You can't escape what you are, brother. No matter how many cars you fix or bedtime stories you read. I'm not that man anymore. No? Victor laughed. Then why are your hands shaking? Not from fear, from anticipation. You miss it. The adrenaline, the violence, the pure clarity of combat. He stopped moving. Admit it, part of you is glad I found you. Gave you an excuse to let the monster out again. Ethan's voice remained steady. You're wrong. I changed for Lily. Everything I do now is for her. Noble words. Victor's hand moved to his jacket. Let's test that theory. The first punch came fast, a veteran strike meant to incapacitate. But Ethan was ready, deflecting the blow and countering with a sharp jab to Victor's ribs. Years of training kicked in as the two men exploded into action. They moved like dancers in a deadly ballet, trading strikes with practiced precision. Victor fought with cold efficiency, each movement calculated to maximum effect. Ethan matched him move for move, muscle memory overriding years of peaceful routine. A kick sent Ethan stumbling into a stack of crates. He rolled aside as Victor's boot crashed where his head had been. Rising fluid, Ethan caught Victor's next punch and used the momentum to slam him into a concrete pillar. You're slower than I remember. Victor taunted through bloodied teeth. Still fast enough, Ethan growled, blocking a vicious elbow strike. They crashed through the warehouse, neither man holding back. The sound of flesh hitting flesh echoed off metal walls. Victor fought dirty, going for eyes and throat. Ethan stayed defensive, looking for openings while protecting vulnerable points. A lucky strike caught Ethan's temple, making his vision blur. Victor pressed the advantage, raining down blows, but Ethan had something Victor didn't, something worth fighting for. Thinking of Lily's smile gave him the strength to push back. Ethan caught Victor's arm mid-strike and twisted, using his opponent's momentum against him. Victor hit the ground hard. Before Ethan could press his advantage, Victor kicked out, catching Ethan's knee. Both men scrambled up, breathing heavy. Just like old times, Victor wheezed, spitting blood. Except this time, I'm not your brother in arms. I'm the man who's going to destroy everything you love. The threat ignited something primal in Ethan. He charged forward, channeling every protective instinct into a series of devastating combinations. Victor matched him blow for blow, but Ethan's fury gave him an edge. A solid right hook sent Victor staggering, but Victor was still dangerous. As Ethan moved in to finish it, Victor pulled something from his jacket, metal glinting in the dim light. Ethan barely managed to dodge the knife aimed at his throat. The blade caught his arm instead, drawing a line of fire across his bicep. They separated, circling again. Blood dripped from both men, their breathing ragged. Victor twirled the knife with practiced ease. Getting sloppy, Cole. The old you would have seen that coming. The old me is dead, Ethan stated flatly. You're fighting a father now. Victor lunged, blade leading. Ethan sidestepped, caught Victor's knife hand, and delivered a crushing elbow to his face. The knife clattered away. Victor stumbled, but recovered, diving for the shadows. Ethan pursued, but Victor was already moving. He crashed through a window, glass shattering around him. By the time Ethan reached the opening, Victor had disappeared into the darkness beyond. His voice drifted back, taunting. This isn't over, Cole. Tell Lily I'll see her soon. Ethan stood at the broken window, fists clenched, watching the night swallow his old brother in arms. The cut on his arm throbbed in time with his racing heart, a reminder that the past wasn't done with him yet. Ethan's muscles ached as he drove home through the quiet streets. The confrontation with Victor had left him drained, both physically and emotionally. Streetlights cast intermittent shadows across his face, highlighting the fresh bruises and cuts from the fight. His hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, knuckles white and raw. The small house came into view, its familiar shape, a usual comfort in the darkness. But something felt wrong. The porch light flickered erratically. He always kept it steady. His heart rate quickened as he pulled into the driveway, noticing Mrs. Anderson's car wasn't there. She was Lily's teacher, the one he'd trusted to watch her. Moving with the silent precision that years of training had ingrained in him, Ethan approached the house. The front door stood slightly open, a thin slice of darkness visible through the gap. His breath caught in his throat. He never left the door unlocked, let alone open. "No, no, no," he whispered, pushing the door wider. It creaked softly on its hinges. The living room was dark, but the pale moonlight streaming through the windows revealed signs of struggle. The coffee table was askew. A lamp lay broken on the floor. And there, in the middle of the room, lay Mr. Hoppy, Lily's beloved stuffed rabbit. The toy she never went anywhere without. The one her mother had given her before she died. Ethan's hands trembled as he picked up the stuffed animal. One of its ears was torn, cotton stuffing spilling out like snow. Lily would never let this happen to Mr. Hoppy. She treated the rabbit like it was made of gold. "Lily?" His voice cracked as he called out. "Baby, are you here?" Silence answered him. He moved through the house with growing desperation, flicking on lights, checking every room. The kitchen chairs were overturned. Lily's backpack lay spilled across the hallway floor, her school papers scattered like fallen leaves. "Lily!" He called louder now, logic giving way to panic. "Lily!" Her bedroom door was open, the covers on her bed pulled half onto the floor. The nightlight she insisted on keeping plugged in was dark. The window was intact, but her closet doors stood wide open, clothes pushed to the sides as if someone had checked inside. Back in the living room, Ethan noticed something he'd missed before. A note pinned to the wall with a military knife, his own knife, taken from his locked cabinet. His hands shook as he pulled it free and read the message. "Now you know how it feels to lose everything. V." The paper crumpled in his fist. Victor had played him. The warehouse meeting was just a distraction, keeping him away from home while they took Lily. All along, Victor had been 10 steps ahead, manipulating him like a puppet. Ethan stumbled backward until his legs hit the couch. Mr. Hoppy fell from his grip, landing silently on the carpet. The room spun around him as the reality crashed down like a physical weight. His baby girl was gone. The one person he'd sworn to protect above all else. The reason he'd left his old life behind. The only light in his world since losing her mother. Taken. His legs gave out. He fell to his knees, the impact sending sharp pain through his already battered body. But the physical pain was nothing compared to the agony tearing through his chest. "Lily!" The scream ripped from his throat, raw and broken, echoing through the empty house. It was the sound of a father's heart shattering, of promises broken, of darkness winning over light. He stayed there on his knees, surrounded by the evidence of his failure. Mr. Hoppy lay silent beside him, its torn ear a testament to his daughter's struggle. The note crushed in his fist held the mockery of a man who'd finally found his revenge. Ethan Cole, former Delta Force operative, trained warrior, and devoted father, had lost the only battle that truly mattered. His little girl was gone. The morning sun cast long shadows across Ethan's empty living room. As he sat motionless on Lily's bed, clutching her stuffed rabbit, dark circles ringed his eyes. He hadn't slept since finding the house empty. His daughter's cheerful drawing still decorated the walls, now seeming to mock his failure to protect her. A gentle knock at the door startled him. Pastor Daniel's familiar voice called out, "Ethan? Son? Are you in there?" Ethan didn't answer, but the door creaked open anyway. Pastor Daniel stepped inside, followed by Mrs. Thompson, Lily's teacher, and Chief Roberts from the police department. Their faces showed a mix of concern and determination. "We're here to help," Mrs. Thompson said firmly, her usually gentle voice carrying steel. "The whole town is mobilizing." Ethan looked up, his expression haunted. "This is my fight. I can't risk anyone else getting hurt." Pastor Daniel sat beside him on the small pink bed. "No, son. This stopped being just your fight when that man targeted one of our children. This community protects its own." Chief Roberts nodded, pulling out a map of the county. "We've got volunteers organizing search parties." The hardware store owner remembered selling supplies to a stranger matching Victor's description 3 days ago. Said the man asked about remote locations. Mrs. Thompson stepped forward, clutching her phone. "My brother works at the gas station on Route 40. He just texted, a black SUV with out-of-state plates stopped there late last night. The man inside bought enough food for 2 people. For the first time since Lily's disappearance, a spark of hope flickered in Ethan's eyes. He stood up, his military training kicking in as he studied the map. "Show me where." The next hour brought a steady stream of townspeople to Ethan's door. Mr. Jenkins from the diner reported suspicious tire tracks near his property. The teenage boys who worked at the local grocery store remembered a man asking about nearby cabins. Even Mrs. Williams, who had been one of the loudest voices against Ethan after his past was revealed, arrived with her husband's hunting club members, offering to search the woods they knew like the backs of their hands. Pastor Daniel watched as Ethan's living room transformed into an impromptu command center. See, you're not alone anymore, Ethan. God works in mysterious ways. Sometimes it takes our darkest moments to show us the light in others. Ethan's hands trembled as he marked potential locations on the map. I was so focused on protecting Lily by myself, I forgot what it meant to be part of something bigger. Mrs. Thompson squeezed his shoulder. Lily taught us all that. She has a way of bringing out the best in people, just like she did with you. The search parties spread out across the county. Regular folks turned into determined hunters, checking abandoned buildings and remote areas. Every hour brought new information, each piece adding to the puzzle. The local radio station broadcast updates, and church prayer groups gathered to support the search efforts. By mid-afternoon, exhaustion showed on every face, but no one thought of quitting. Then came the breakthrough they needed. A breathless teenager burst through the door. Mr. Cole, my dad and I were checking the old logging roads up by Miller's Creek. We found fresh tire tracks leading to that old river cabin, the one that's been empty since the flood 2 years ago. Ethan's head snapped up. The river cabin. Of course. Remote, defensible, with clear sight lines and multiple escape routes. Exactly the kind of place Victor would choose. Chief Roberts immediately grabbed his radio. I'll coordinate with state police. We can have tactical teams here and— No. Ethan's voice was quiet but firm. Victor will have scouts watching. The moment he spots police vehicles, he'll disappear. With Lily, he studied the map intently, but he won't expect locals. Hunters, fishermen, people who know those woods. Mr. Williams stepped forward, his weathered face determined. My hunting club knows every trail around that cabin. We can guide you in without being seen. Pastor Daniel nodded slowly. And the prayer group can gather at the church, far enough away not to draw attention, but close enough to respond if needed. Mrs. Thompson pulled out her phone. I'll coordinate with the other teachers. We can set up a communication network, keep everyone informed without raising suspicion. Ethan looked around the room at these people. Neighbors he'd kept at arm's length for so long, now standing ready to help him save his daughter. His throat tightened. I don't know how to thank you all. Just bring our Lily home, Mrs. Williams said softly, surprising everyone with tears in her eyes. That little girl. She drew me a picture last week, you know. Said she was sorry I seemed sad lately and wanted to make me smile. We need her light back in this town. The next hour was a blur of careful preparation. Mr. Williams and his hunting club members gathered their gear. Not weapons, but detailed maps, night vision equipment, and radio handsets that wouldn't be easily tracked. Mrs. Thompson coordinated with her teacher network, setting up a chain of communication that would appear normal to any watching eyes. Chief Roberts quietly positioned plainclothes officers in strategic locations, ready to respond but invisible to surveillance. In his bedroom, Ethan changed into dark clothing suitable for moving through woods. His hands moved automatically, muscle memory from his military days taking over as he prepared for what was to come. But this time was different. This wasn't a military operation with faceless operators. This was his community, coming together to save his little girl. Pastor Daniel appeared in the doorway. We're ready when you are, son. But before you go, he held out a small object, a child's drawing, creased and worn. Lily made this for the church bulletin board last month. She drew her family, you, her mother in heaven, and all the people she said God gave her to help watch over her. She knew something you're just learning. You were never meant to carry this burden alone. Ethan took the drawing with trembling hands, seeing his daughter's crayon artwork of smiling faces surrounding her stick figure self. In the corner, she'd written in her careful second-grade handwriting, "My family is bigger than I thought." Tucking the drawing carefully into his pocket, Ethan joined the others waiting in his living room. Mr. Williams spread out a detailed map of the river cabin area. Here's how we'll do this, the old hunter said, pointing out the trails. We know those woods better than any outsider ever could. Victor may be watching the main approaches, but there are paths only locals would know. Thunder rolled across the dark sky as Ethan crouched behind a fallen log near the old river cabin. Rain pelted his face, but his focus remained razor sharp. Through the cabin's grimy window, He could make out two shadows, one small and still, the other pacing. His heart clenched at the sight of Lily's silhouette. The wooden steps leading to the cabin's porch were slick with rain. Ethan moved like a ghost, his years of training taking over. Each board might creak, each step could alert Victor. He couldn't risk Lily's safety with rushed movements. Another crack of thunder masked the sound of Ethan testing the front door. Locked. He remembered the cabin's layout from fishing trips years ago. There was a back entrance through the kitchen. As he circled around, staying low, Victor's voice carried through the thin walls. "Your daddy's taking his sweet time, isn't he?" Victor's tone was casual, almost friendly, making it all the more chilling. "Maybe he's not coming after all." "He'll come." Lily's voice was small but steady. "My daddy always comes for me." Ethan's chest swelled with pride and pain. His little girl, so brave. The back door's lock gave way easily under his practiced touch. He slipped inside, water dripping from his clothes. The cabin's interior was dark, lit only by a kerosene lamp in the main room. Ethan could hear Victor continuing his one-sided conversation with Lily, moving silently through the kitchen. He positioned himself near the doorway leading to the main room. "Your father and I used to be brothers, you know," Victor was saying. "We fought together, bled together. Then he abandoned everything. Abandoned me." "You're lying," Lily said. "My daddy doesn't abandon people." Ethan peered around the corner. Lily sat tied to a wooden chair, her school uniform muddy but otherwise appearing unharmed. Victor stood by the window, a pistol hanging loosely in his right hand. "You think you know him?" Victor laughed harshly. "The man who fixes cars and makes you pancakes? That's not who he really is. Your father is a killer." Lightning flashed, illuminating the room in stark white. In that instant, Ethan made his move. He burst from the doorway, crossing the distance to Victor in 3 long strides. The other man spun, raising his gun, but Ethan was already there. Their collision sent both men crashing into the wall. The gun clattered to the floor, sliding away under a moth-eaten couch. Victor's elbow caught Ethan in the ribs, but Ethan absorbed the blow, driving his shoulder into Victor's midsection. "Daddy!" Lily cried out. "Close your eyes, sweetheart," Ethan commanded, not wanting her to witness what came next. Victor fought like a cornered animal, all precision lost to desperate fury. He grabbed a lamp from a side table and swung it at Ethan's head. Ethan ducked, the lamp shattering against the wall behind him. "You should have stayed hidden, Cole," Victor spat, throwing a wild punch. "Playing house with your little girl. Did you think you could just forget everything?" Ethan blocked the punch and countered with one of his own, connecting solidly with Victor's jaw. "I didn't forget," he growled. "I chose something better." They grappled across the room, knocking over furniture, neither man willing to give ground. Victor was still dangerous, his skills not completely dulled by time and hate. But Ethan had something Victor didn't, something worth fighting for. "Kill me then," Victor shouted, blood trickling from his split lip. "Finish it! Show your daughter who you really are!" Ethan had Victor pinned against the wall, his forearm pressed against the other man's throat. It would be so easy to end it here, to eliminate the threat to his daughter forever. His muscles tensed. "Daddy?" Lily's voice trembled. The sound cut through Ethan's rage like a knife through fog. He looked into Victor's eyes and saw something he recognized. The same emptiness he'd fought against in himself after leaving the service. The same darkness that Lily's love had helped him overcome. "No," Ethan said, his voice firm but quiet. "This cycle ends here." In one smooth motion, he spun Victor around and forced his arms behind his back. Victor struggled, but Ethan's grip was iron. "You're weak," Victor snarled. "You always were." "You're wrong," Ethan replied, using his belt to bind Victor's hands. "It takes more strength to show mercy than to kill." Red and blue lights began flashing through the windows as police cars pulled up outside. Ethan had called them before approaching the cabin, another choice his younger self might not have made. "They're here, baby," he called to Lily. "It's over now." Officers burst through both doors, weapons raised. Ethan stepped back, hands raised as they took control of Victor. Only when they had led his former brother-in-arms away did he finally rush to Lily's side. His hands shook as he untied her bonds, checking her for injuries. "Are you hurt? Did he hurt you?" Instead of answering, Lily launched herself into his arms, nearly knocking him over. Her small body trembled against his chest as she clung to him. "I knew you'd come," she whispered into his neck. I knew you wouldn't let him win. Ethan held her tight, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. Outside, the storm was beginning to pass, thunder now distant and soft. He could hear Victor's angry shouts as the police led him away, but they seemed to belong to another world entirely. I'll always come for you, he murmured into Lily's hair. Always. Autumn leaves danced in the gentle breeze as Ethan Cole stood at the back of the church community center. His strong hands, once used only for combat and fixing engines, now guided a teenage boy through a series of controlled breathing exercises. That's it, Jake. Focus on your breath, Ethan said softly. When anger rises, this is your anchor. Jake, a 15-year-old with rebellious eyes and a troubled past, nodded. His shoulders relaxed as he followed Ethan's instructions. 3 other teens sat cross-legged on mats nearby, watching intently. Mr. Cole, Sarah, a girl with bright red hair, raised her hand. Is it true you used to be in the military? Ethan's eyes crinkled at the corners as he smiled. That's right. But the most important battles I've fought weren't with weapons. They were right here. He tapped his chest. In the heart. From the doorway came the sound of small feet running. Lily burst into the room, her backpack bouncing, fresh from the after-school program. Her face lit up at the sight of her father teaching. Daddy, she called out, but then remembered the class in session. She covered her mouth and whispered, Sorry. The teens chuckled, and Ethan's heart swelled with pride. His daughter had grown so much in these past weeks. The trauma of her kidnapping had left its mark, but children were resilient, with help from the school counselor and the loving support of their community. Lily's nightmares had become less frequent. Okay, everyone, let's wrap up for today, Ethan announced. Remember what we talked about. Strength isn't about fighting. It's about knowing when not to fight. As the teens gathered their things, Jake lingered behind. Mr. Cole? His voice was uncertain. My dad, he's getting out of jail next month. I'm scared I'll end up just like him. Ethan placed a gentle hand on the boy's shoulder. Listen to me, Jake. Our past doesn't define us. Our choices do. You're here, aren't you? That's already a different choice. Lily approached them, clutching her latest art project, a colorful drawing of their family. She held it up proudly. Look, Daddy, I drew you teaching at church. Jake smiled at the picture. Your dad's pretty cool, Lily. He's my hero, Lily declared matter-of-factly. Not because he's strong, but because he helps people. Ethan felt his throat tighten with emotion. He hugged his daughter close, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. After saying goodbye to Jake, they walked through the church garden. The late afternoon sun painted everything in warm, golden light. Mrs. Thompson, Lily's teacher, waved from where she was, tending to the community flower beds. The youth program is such a blessing, she called out. Those kids really look up to you, Ethan. They just need someone to believe in them, he replied. Like this town believed in us when we needed it most. At home, Ethan prepared dinner while Lily did her homework at the kitchen table. The routine felt precious now. These simple moments of domestic peace that he'd once taken for granted. Daddy? Lily looked up from her math worksheet. Can we do the lantern tonight? For Mommy? Ethan paused, stirring the pot of spaghetti sauce. They had bought the paper lantern weeks ago, but had been waiting for the right moment. You know what, sweetheart? I think tonight's perfect. After dinner, they sat on the front porch steps. The sky was clearing after a brief evening shower, stars beginning to peek through gaps in the clouds. Ethan carefully unfolded the delicate paper lantern while Lily watched with wide eyes. Mommy would love this, she whispered, running her small fingers along the lantern's edge. She sure would, Ethan agreed, his voice soft with memory. She always loved beautiful things, just like you. Together, they lit the small fuel cell at the lantern's base. The paper began to glow from within, casting warm light on their faces. Lily's eyes shimmered with tears, but she was smiling. Ready? Ethan asked, holding the lantern steady. Lily nodded. For Mommy, she whispered. For Mommy, Ethan echoed. They released the lantern together, watching as it caught the gentle breeze. Higher and higher it floated, a point of golden light against the darkening sky. Lily leaned against her father's side, and he wrapped his arm around her shoulders. The lantern drifted peacefully upward, carrying their love and memories into the night. As they watched it float away, Ethan felt a deep sense of peace settle over him. The weight he'd carried for so long, the guilt, the fear, the constant vigilance, began to lift, like the lantern rising into the stars. "Look, Daddy," Lily pointed up. "It's dancing." Indeed, the lantern seemed to sway gently in the high currents of air. A beautiful farewell dance for the wife and mother they'd loved so dearly. And as they sat there together, father and daughter, Ethan knew that while the past would always be part of their story, it no longer had the power to define their future. The lantern climbed higher until it was just a tiny spark of light, barely distinguishable from the emerging stars. Peace settled over them like a warm blanket, wrapping father and daughter in its gentle embrace as they watched their message of love float up to heaven. What would you do if you were in their place? Comment your answer below, and let's see how you'd rewrite the ending. If you enjoyed the story of Ethan Cole, I handpicked the next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.